Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at Build IT. Before we jump into the session, just a couple housekeeping items. The first item is the pink Live Now icon on the left-hand navigation bar. If you have questions throughout the session, go ahead and submit those by clicking on the Questions button within the Live Now section. Our hosts will be moderating the questions, and if we have time for Q&A at the end, we'd be happy to answer some of those. If time doesn't allow, we'll make sure to follow up with you shortly. And last but not least, if you have any technical issues or have any general conference questions, you can click on the yellow chat icon at the bottom of the left navigation bar and chat with the Build IT help. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters, Chris and John. Chris, John, you can take it away.
Thank you, Angela, and welcome everybody who chose to join us today for How to Move Large Data Fast. It's an overview of FileCatalyst technology. So let me just start off with some introductions first. My name is Chris Bailey. I'm a product manager for data security and file acceleration here at Help Systems. I was formerly the co-founder and CEO of FileCatalyst, and I'll let John introduce himself.
Yes, hello. My name is John Tkachevsky. I'm the co-founder of FileCatalyst with Chris. I used to be the president, and now I'm the manager of the solutions engineering team here at Help System.
Thanks, John. So we'll jump right in. So what is FileCatalyst? So I have this FileCatalyst at a glance. There's really a lot to the solution we're going to try and cram in here, but I'll give you the high-level details. For those of you not familiar with FileCatalyst, it's file transfer acceleration. What that means is that with typical file transfer protocols, you would not necessarily achieve full bandwidth or full speed when you're dealing with geographically distant locations when you're transferring files, and FileCatalyst overcomes that issue. So it's an enterprise-grade product that's used by a lot of big companies. Dell would be one of our biggest customers. And it's also been used for some of the largest sporting events in the world, like the Olympics and the World Cup. It is the industry leader in file transfer acceleration, and that's based on our UDP-based protocol, which I'll get into in a minute. But the whole idea with FileCatalyst is taking that complicated problem of how do we send files from A to B a lot faster than traditional FTP or SFTP and make it easy. And that's where our suite of applications are built on top of that technology and enable that. We also have a central management tool that lets you monitor your entire deployment. Again, this has been used for some of the largest sporting events in the world. It integrates with cloud storage, so a lot of our customers have migrated their applications to the cloud in Amazon or Microsoft Azure, and so we need to have the ability to integrate into those object storages like Amazon S3 and Azure Blob. And then one of our bread and butter tools is our SDK. So we focus on the technology of moving files fast. We have those off-the-shelf products, but we also have a very extensive software development kit that allows you to take that and integrate it into your own product. And we're also using that same SDK to integrate into other Help Systems data security products. In particular, the first one will be Go Anywhere MFT. And we'll get into that a little bit in a minute. This is just a small sampling of our customers, and you can see there's a lot of logos you might recognize. We do a lot of sales in the media and entertainment industry, but also in enterprise IT. So you'll notice like Sky Sports, Sony Pictures. A lot of these names might be names you know. I'll turn it over to John for a minute here. He can get into one of the use cases that we've done recently that's maybe a little more exciting.
So we started about a year ago to work with HPE on autonomous vehicles and how to build a development platform for autonomous vehicles. And one of the use cases that we've implemented and now is in production is transferring files between Stockholm in Sweden to Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And the requirement there is to move about 200 terabytes of files a day. So it's quite a big, impressive number, and we're very proud of this very interesting deployment. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks, John. So how does it work? And what's the difference between FileCatalyst, say, versus a TCP-based protocol like FTP or HTTP? Well, the top area up here, you can see it's sort of a visual representation of how TCP works. You have a source and a destination. The source will send pieces of the file to the destination, and each individual piece has to be acknowledged sequentially by the destination. There's a finite amount of data that can be sent before waiting for that acknowledgement. And what happens is when you have a large geographic distance between those endpoints, you have a lot of dead air where the sender is waiting for acknowledgements from the receiver before it can send new data. FileCatalyst works differently. It'll send multiple of these packets of data concurrently. So while you're waiting for acknowledgements for one piece of data, you're progressively sending new data, and you always have a fully optimized link regardless of the geographic location and the network conditions that are involved. So you can see on this chart here, on the bottom is the latency, and I'll get into some real world scenarios in a minute, but think of the latency as the amount of time it takes to pass a message from the source to the destination and get a response back again. As geography grows, let's say you're sending from New York to Boston, it's very low latency. If you're on a local area network, it's even lower, maybe 0 milliseconds. But as you get into international transfers or across the country, then you start to get in these higher numbers. And you can see FileCatalyst is that straight dark blue line across the top here. And regular FTP is a little bit faster on the LAN, but as you get into these large geographic distance and the higher latencies, FTP starts to slow down significantly. Okay, so you're not going to get any speed improvements on a LAN with FileCatalyst, but as you start to have higher bandwidths and higher distances between the two endpoints, that's where you're going to start to see the big improvement. Like if you're going from US to the other side of the world, for example, you're going to see a big gap in speed. And how does that translate into times for file transfer? That's what everybody usually relates it to. How much faster is it going to be to get my file from A to B? Well, these charts give you some examples. So the top chart you can see here on a 1 gigabit connection from various locations. Amsterdam to London, for example, is a very low RTT. So all these examples use a 10 gig file, and they show the distances, and they'll show you the time with FTP versus the time with FileCatalyst. So even in the best scenario here, 50 milliseconds, FTP to send that 10 gig file is an hour and 28 minutes, sorry, and it's 1 minute and 23 seconds with FileCatalyst. And as we go down this chart, the distance is growing. So there's a little value here, RTT, 150 milliseconds and 220. You'll see in the FTP column, the time to send that same 10 gig file increases from 1 hour and 28 minutes, 3 hours and 6 minutes, 3 hours and 22 minutes. Whereas with FileCatalyst, you get a constant speed. If I go back to the previous slide, you'll see that's basically an illustration of FileCatalyst sending at the optimal speed regardless of the location. We don't change when the geographic distance grows. Its FTP gets slower and slower. Now, when you move to the 10 gig chart, that's where you start to see even more dramatic changes. So New York to LA, you can see 2 hours and 19 minutes for that 10 gig file, only 8.4 seconds with FileCatalyst. So when you have a lot of bandwidth and larger files, you really start to see the effects that FileCatalyst can have and the dramatic difference there is between FileCatalyst and legacy transfer technologies. So to give you another visual representation of who is a good candidate for FileCatalyst, we have this Venn diagram that shows the 3 different variables that will kind of converge to let you know if you're a good candidate. So in the top left there, you have large files. That's a given. You don't see as big a difference in the transfer times if you have smaller files, because it might take 10 seconds or it might take 15 seconds. What's a big deal waiting a couple more? But when you get into these larger files, let's say greater than 4 gigs, that's where you're going to see big differences. Long distance, so ideally greater than 50 milliseconds. I mean, that's plus or minus. And you can have large files and high bandwidth and a bit lower than that in terms of RTT. But we're trying to show you if you have 2 or more of these conditions, you're going to be, getting some benefit from FileCatalyst. And then the higher bandwidth one is on the bottom. If you have large files with a long distance and high bandwidth, that is the ideal case. That's where you're going to have a lot of problems with FTP or anything really that's based on TCP, like SFTP or HTTP-based transfers. So these are just the issues that we overcome. And then what we've done is we built a suite of applications on top of that technology to make it usable for the customers. We're not going to go into every one of these products today because we just don't have time. We're going to focus on the core suite called FileCatalyst Direct. Think of FileCatalyst Direct as a replacement for an FTP server and client scenario, but it has many flavors of client applications. And it's going to give you the 10 gig speeds, encryption, all the different things you'd expect. But it's going to have the SDK that I mentioned and some web-based components. Let me just walk you through a little bit of that suite here. So in the middle, you have a FileCatalyst server that can connect to some storage, whether on-prem or in the cloud. As I mentioned earlier, it can connect to your S3, Amazon S3 or Azure Blob Storage. And then on the left, we have several client applications to choose from. So we have an automation client called our FileCatalyst Hot folder. And that one can monitor a folder on your desktop and automatically upload files to the destination server where they land in your cloud storage, for example. Or it could monitor folders on the server that point to cloud storage or on-prem storage. And when it sees new files, it can download them. Okay, so that's our automation client. John will get into a demo of that in a few minutes. We also have our desktop client, which would be like a typical FileZilla, 2-pane, or QFTP or something like that. So it's a very simple tool for end users if they need to do ad hoc transfers. We have a browser-based client as well. That's where you would take part of our SDK potentially and embed it into an existing web application to add upload and download acceleration functionality. We have mobile clients and a mobile SDK actually, so you can embed the acceleration into your existing mobile clients. And then the SDK itself is one of those clients, fully documented. It has REST APIs, C++, Java. So all the tools that you would need to take the acceleration technology and put it into your application. Moving on. Second here. Good timer going. Okay, so some of the use cases that FileCatalyst covers. So going left to right, just data mirroring. Where FileCatalyst excels is if you have a large amount of data to move from A to B, a lot of bandwidth, but it's going to take a year to move it with traditional methods. And I'm not exaggerating there. We've had clients who started up a transfer and it literally says it's going to take a year to transfer. With FileCatalyst, you can definitely bring that down. So we have customers that John mentioned moving tens of terabytes per day with FileCatalyst. Data distribution. So you can put files in a central location and then have FileCatalyst watch folders, for example, automation clients at potentially hundreds of locations downloading that content from you. Cloud storage integration. As I mentioned, if you have an application that uses your Amazon S3 or your Azure Blob storage, you can put a FileCatalyst server in the cloud in a compute instance that's near your object storage and have FileCatalyst accelerate transfers into your object storage so it's accessible by your cloud applications. Just a couple of scenarios there for you. And then, as I mentioned, the SDK and the integration with our MFT solutions at FileCatalyst, because we have the extensive SDK capabilities, we're already leveraging those to integrate FileCatalyst into GoAnywhere MFT. We have the future ability to integrate into GoAnywhere or GlobalScape EFT solution as well. And we have customers who take FileCatalyst and embed it into their third-party solutions as well. So really, it's kind of like Switzerland in terms of partnerships and integration. We basically keep the technology tight with FileCatalyst and focus on making it faster and easier to access and focusing on simple use cases. And then we partner with best-of-breed solutions, including our own, to provide the more extensive and vertical specific use cases. And then we have that SDK that you can take it and embed it into your own homegrown or custom solution. So I'm actually going to hand it over to John now. And John, you can take presenter, and John will walk you through a demonstration of FileCatalyst hot folder and server, I believe, and a little bit of FileCatalyst Central.
Hi, Chris. Just starting out my presentation here. Show screen. How do I
so John, click the bottom left plus button and say take presenter.
Perfect. All right. I'm good. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So as Chris mentioned, we're just going to concentrate today on direct, and I'm just going to be talking about really the direct server and the hot folder. You can connect FileCatalyst to all these different nodes that Chris mentioned and pepper them all around the world to provide, bulk data delivery from different regional offices and regional headquarters you might have. And in this case here, I'm just going to concentrate my demo on my USA map, where I have a very simple deployment of, I have a FileCatalyst server in LA and a hot folder in New York City. So if I connect to my FileCatalyst server, what I get here is I just get a number of usernames. So these users could be, it's just a username and a password and some kind of a home directory on the machine, on the local machine, where the files will be stored and dropped off and dropped into or picked up from. Of course, all these could have subfolders, and these home directories can also be, for example, Samba shares. So if I have if I want to do create network drives or share files through a network drive, it could also be S3, like here I have an Amazon example, or Wasabi, or many other options for your home directories. You additionally can also create virtual folders. For example, here I created a virtual folder that shares the same path as a Go Anywhere user. So for those that are already using Go Anywhere or GlobalScape, it is very easy to run FileCatalyst alongside and share home directories and the data between all those three solutions, because we are all using a similar concept of having directory. So this is really all on the user side. Now, if I go back to my central map, and I'm going to zoom in here into the FileCatalyst hot folder. So FileCatalyst hot folder is an application that wakes up on a given schedule, checks for any new files, either remotely or locally, and either uploads or downloads these files. So in this case here, I have a series of hot folders I created. I created some sites. So these are different FileCatalyst servers. As you noticed in my central, the global here deployment, you can see that they have a couple of FileCatalyst servers and a few hot folders. So I have the options here to where I want to deliver to. If I go back to the hot folder, so once I created my site and my hot folder, this is where I get into the interesting stuff. And let me just walk you through some of these options here that you can do when you're transferring files with FileCatalyst. So you pick your hot folder, you pick your site, and you give it a name. You're scheduling, so you have every single possible option of scheduling. Every day at 1, every 5 minutes, every 2 minutes, once a day, and you can create all these options. With connection, you have the option to either use the accelerated protocol or multi-stream TCP. As well, so that's another acceleration technique we use. We can do multi-stream TCP or UDP, depending on what you want, and then you can specify the congestion. So congestion is if you want to be good on the network, you can decide how aggressive you want FileCatalyst to be to regain the extra bandwidth. In this case here, I have it on the highest, but you can adjust that based on task. You can also do an MD5 checksum. So imagine if you're sending a package with FedEx, you're going to get a tracking number. And then when you click on the tracking number, it will tell you that package has been delivered. It's the same thing here, where we can do a bit-by-bit comparison MD5 in the protocol and give you a delivery receipt that is that you cannot be questioned if the files fully arrived on premise. So this is really good, especially if you're working with trading partners and you don't want to get into an argument, oh, file arrived, but it's corrupt or partially arrived. Like here, you will always know that you have a full file and it's correct. You can keep file modification, force ownership. You can send with the temporary file names. And a big one here, if you're sending a lot of files at once, you can say how many workers you want. So how many client connections you want to use up for transfer. So if you have a big data set of, let's say, 5,000 files to send, you can set this to, let's say, 5, and then each client is going to work faster. Data minimization is, we have something called ability to send deltas. So this is very similar to rsync. So you're essentially doing an rsync. So if you send a first version, and then you send first version of the file, and then subsequently you send a newer version, we can just compute the delta and sense just the difference. Dynamic files, this allows you to send growing files. So for example, you have a virtual tape backup that you're creating, and you want to send that. Well, you can start the process of creating virtual tape backup and send a progressive transfer right away, even if that file is still being built or created. And FileCatalyst will just chase the tail of that tape backup file. So you don't have to wait for one process to finish before you start another. File sets. So here, as you can specify, you send only files that are, let's say, newest files first, or you can send, send the sequence here. So if you want to specify a sequence of sending, oldest first, newest first, smallest, largest, you can make all these different tasks, and then post tasks. So you can send files, you can rename the file after the sending, delete it, leave it alone, call a URL, send out emails, and all that options. So just before I finish, what would be a demo of file transfer application without a file transfer? So let me just do here, I'm going to pop up an activity window, and I'm going to execute this task. So you can kind of see what the file transfer is doing. So what we have here, we can show you that I'm working with 3 files at once. So all these 3 files are going. I have my graph. And another thing I can do, I can bring up visualization. So when you're transferring files, you might get bottlenecks on the network. You might get a bottlenecks on CPU. You might get also a bottleneck on disk read and write. So let's see, if one of these, it wouldn't be keeping up, it would be red right now for me. So it's very easy to troubleshoot where you're, what's making your file transfer not as fast as possible. And then if I go back to my central here, I can also monitor and follow this through a global transfer that you can see the link is orange and it's an upload, and I can see what's going on. So that's the whole demo. Let me just stop my sharing here. And back to you, Chris.
Thanks, John. So that's the demo. Now, John, do you want to just walk through some of these large file transfer considerations, and then we'll move into Q&A?
Yeah, sure. So what you should look for when you're looking for an accelerated or bulk data transfer solution, we'll look for something that can provide you multiple acceleration techniques. And we'll provide you with UDP, with multi-stream TCP, with compression, rsync, that all of this is built in. You have something with guaranteed delivery that will do a bit-by-bit comparison of the files you're delivering and making sure they are correct. See what's the maximum speed of the solution. Can it go at 10 gigabits on a single file? Like depending what you're sending, we're sending multiple small files, then that's a lot easier to accomplish than very large files. Can it do something called N files? So FileCatalyst, let's say if you have 6 million files in a folder, you can point that folder to FileCatalyst, and we will start transferring immediately. We don't have to run through 6 million files to figure out what to transfer. That's a huge time saving. Same along the lines of those, sending locked files or growing files. That's also a big consideration. Think of something that has checkpoint restarting and automatic resumption, has automation and SDK built in. Central management, like I showed you there, is also important. Maintaining attributes on the Linux and Unix machine. And then object storage consideration. Are you sending something to S3 or Azure or Google Cloud? All of that, think of that. So that's really sort of the consideration. I don't know. We do have 5 minutes for Q&A. So let's see here.
Yeah, so feel free to post into the Live Now section your questions, as Angela pointed out at the beginning. One question that we have gotten a lot is, when will we see FileCatalyst integrated into existing help systems data security products like Go Anywhere MFT, for example, or GlobalScape. And the answer to that is as early as this summer, we'll have a start to the integration released. We've been working on it since the beginning of the year in January. It was one of the first things we started to tackle. And you'll see an integration. It probably won't be a complete integration, maybe limited to just web client uploads. So, you know, if you're familiar with MFT, the web client might be supplemented by a FileCatalyst upload within a browser for ingesting files or for downloads with secure mail and that kind of thing. And by the end of the year, we should have a little bit more complete integration with FileCatalyst server completely embedded inside MFT. And in the future, we do have that SDK, as I mentioned, on a case-by-case basis. We're looking to see what the customer interest is for a integration into GlobalScape as well. So that's one question.
Yeah, I'll just to add to Chris's and the integration side. I've been my team of solutions engineering. We've been working for the last 3 months on some real life use cases of how FileCatalyst can work alongside Go Anywhere MFT, and we came up with a very nice set of projects or workflow projects in Go Anywhere MFT where we can initiate a transfer from using FileCatalyst from Go Anywhere for any files that are incoming from either triggers or monitors, and everything can be followed and logged through Go Anywhere. So we're working on more options like that, but right now, as it stands, we can pretty much do initiate any file transfers with FileCatalyst through Go Anywhere.
Yeah, so those are the logical integration points, but there may be more for those of you who are data classification customers or digital rights management. Every time FileCatalyst touches a file, for example, on an upload into Go Anywhere, we may kick off Titus classification, for example, or encrypt with Vera. These are things that are being looked at. Certainly they're possible with APIs. It's just a matter of us validating those use cases and how our customers of our various data security products want to consume the different products. What's the logical customer journey for them from one product to another? But that is a process that's going to be, it's underway, and it's probably going to be a continual process to kind of evaluate what's the most logical path for one customer of one of our data security products to the next, and how does that look for them. So look out for some outreach from myself and the data security team to kind of try and put together that roadmap over the next few years.
And another question, Chris, that comes up is about checkpoint restarting, and can FileCatalyst do a checkpoint restart? And of course, the answer is yes. We can restart a transfer if it stops. We have something called a short-term restart, that meaning that, let's say the connectivity dropped for just a couple of seconds, and all it takes is just a reconnection and continuing the transfer. Or it could be also a long-term shutdown where, let's say, the connectivity dropped for a day or two, and now you're coming back to the same transfer. Those long-term outages can also be recovered. And so
we got two questions came in, two more, John. One of them is whether the presentation will be shared, and yes, the recording will be shared after the event. And then another one is a question for you, John. Cindy from, forgive me if I mispronounce this, Ruan Transportation asked if they could gain access to the MFT integration that you spoke about, and how can they do that?
I have a copy of the projects. I exported them as they are just exported as XML files. I would be happy to share them with you. You would need to install FileCatalyst Server, Central, and something called Transfer Agent alongside your Go Anywhere deployments. So the Go Anywhere can then request the transfers and sort of orchestrate, coordinate all the transfers.
We probably should have added it on here, but if you see John's name as the presenter, it's just john.kachevsky@helpsystems.com. If you want to reach out to him, he can provide you with those details. Or you can reach out to myself, chris.bailey@helpsystems.com as well. So I think we've hit our time limit, and I don't see any more questions. So thank you everyone for joining us. And again, you have our contact coordinates. The presentation will be shared. So thanks again, and feel free to follow up with any questions, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you all.